Hello, everyone, and welcome to That Weird History Podcast. I am Kenneth, the host of this podcast. Now, this is the first episode, and honestly, I'm making this podcast because I really love history. One day, maybe I would like to teach history, but for now, I thought making a podcast on different historical events that I think are fun, intrigue me, and really show the strength of humans throughout history, I wanted to show some of those. So today's first topic is going to be about Polynesia, just to get right into it. If people don't know what Polynesia is, it's a region that's north of Hawaii, south of New Zealand, east to Eastern Island, and then right on the border of Fiji is the border of Polynesia. Now, I'd like to talk about the immigration patterns of Polynesia because to me, if you look at all the islands and you look at what they were able to share with their cultures, yet they were spread about hundreds and hundreds of miles across from each other, I think it's really fascinating. Now I'm going to start where did the people of Polynesia come from? Now we think around 1000 to 3000 BC, the people of Polynesia originated from the island of Taiwan, which is right off China, right south of Japan, north of the Philippines, if you aren't aware of where Taiwan is. Now around 1000 to 3000 BC, most likely later, they went out and traveled. They went out eastward, and they went out to about the Philippines. Philippines was settled in around 1500 BC, they think, of what we know. Now, that's still not even close to Polynesia. Now they kept going east, more east, to the Melanesian Islands, right next to Australia, right north of Australia, to Fiji. All of these islands right before the Polynesian Triangle. Now, what's interesting is that Samoa, the island of Samoa, was apparently settled in 800 BC. Yet New Zealand, which is just south of Samoa, just south of Fiji, which was apparently settled in 900 BC. New Zealand was not settled till 1200 AD. That means the people of Fiji lived for over 2100 years, and New Zealand just sat there, did nothing, because they hadn't gone down south. So it's pretty interesting how they came from Taiwan to the Philippines to Fiji, yet they stopped. They went to Samoa, and then everything outward they waited. Cook Island, 700 AD. Hawaii, 900 AD. And then New Zealand, again, 1200 AD. Now, this is just what we think and what we know. And a majority of this information comes from the various voyages that we had. The different British cartographers that went out and wanted to discover the seas, discover new land, even though people were already there. And one of the big people who did that was James Cook, who was a British discoverer, cartographer, whatever you want to call him. Now, he did 3 main voyages. He has 3 very important voyages that James Cook did himself. Now, he went on 3 different voyages on 3 different ships. Well, 2 ships. The second and third voyage was the same ship. His first endeavor was the Endeavor, ironically, from 1768 to 1771. He sailed from good old Britain all the way to what would be New Zealand. He went south. So he started from the British, went south to where the Cape Horn is in South America, then he went west to where New Zealand was, Australia, and where Polynesia is. But he still didn't really discover anything in the Polynesian area. And then a few years later, a year later after he gets back from the Endeavor, he goes on the Resolution. And the Resolution's a little different. This time he goes eastward. So he goes from the east. He goes south of the United Kingdom, then he goes east towards Africa instead of west towards South America. And this voyage has him discover New Zealand, but most importantly, he discovers more Polynesia. He maps out the Polynesian Islands, New Zealand, Fiji, Tahiti, Cook Island, Easter Island, Caledonia. I think I butchered that. All of these islands he discovered. So 1772 to 1775, he was on the Resolution. And then finally, he did the 1776 to 1779, his final voyage on the Resolution again. This time he went to Hawaii. Now he went to Hawaii on 2 different trips. The first time he was welcomed there, it may have been more than 2, I just know there's 2 different occasions. And the first time he was welcomed, and he was able to leave the island without getting killed. And on the second, he was murdered and eaten by the local Hawaiians. Now they actually did an interesting test. Who knows if this actually was real? Could just be a fable. But apparently, when he was in the Hawaiian Islands, the Hawaiian people offered him women to see if he was a god. And when he slept with the women, they realized that he couldn't be a god because a god wouldn't indulge in the kind of desires that man had because they're a god. So they were able to ascertain that he wasn't a god. He was just some white person that went on their land. So they ate him. And a majority of our information about the Polynesian culture comes from his discoveries. I've read his biography. It's wonderful. I highly recommend reading James Cook's biography. It details all of what happened on his three main voyages, from the Endeavour, the Resolution, and the Resolution again. What happened day to day, and then specifically what he did with the Hawaiian people, how he tried to introduce different things that came from his culture, and they shared different things from their culture. And even in his journal, like, he was fascinated by the Hawaiian people, and he wanted to go back, which he did, because he stopped there on his Resolution trip. He circled back because he went north to where Alaska, Siberia is after visiting Hawaii, but then he went back south, and then he went, I want to go back to Hawaii. So we went back to Hawaii, and he thought, cool, these people are chill. They were not. But how does that relate to Polynesia? Well, a lot of our information comes from that. But at the end of the day, we're not going to really know what happened, because history. We wait to murder. Look at Christopher Columbus. He had the native people of Cuba dig up the beaches because he thought there was gold, because the sands were very gold. You know, they had that goldish tint. He thought there was gold in the sand. And if you didn't dig up gold, your hands were chopped off. It's stuff like that. Like, we don't know because we murdered them. Same with Hawaii. We only have a fraction of their culture. But that's not really what's interesting, because Hawaii was they were AD. That's when they hadn't gone more eastward. What about islands like Fiji, which was 900 BC, supposedly? Or the Melanesian Islands, which was around 1300 BC. You got to think, these people, their culture, it wasn't like mainland Eurasia, Europe and Asia. They weren't connected. These people were very far off. Their culture was completely separated. It was a culture of the seas. It's just completely fascinating how all these different historical events happened between 3000 and 1000 BC. You had the fall and rise of Egypt. Rome hadn't even been... Rome was, a few hundred years, and Rome's going to be settled. I believe Rome was settled sometime in the 800 BC, sometime like that. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But just all these different historical events that happened between 3000 and 1000 BC, where these people from Taiwan just are like, all right, we're getting on our boats, and we're going to sail east. And they were smart because they went south, where there was land already, where the Philippines was, where Indonesia is now, Australia. They were smart, because if they went straight east, they would have died. Because there's not many islands straight east of Taiwan. There's a few. But a lot of those islands are in the southeast, Malaysia, Polynesia area. I just think it's so fascinating how this culture adapted and evolved. Fiji, again, 900 BC. Samoa, 800 BC. But then the Cook Islands, not even 700 BC. So for some reason, 1,500 years. Not that far of a distance between Samoa and Cook Island. If you compare the distance between Taiwan and Samoa, huge distance. Samoa and Cook Island, not very far. Or even Fiji and New Zealand. And Fiji was settled in 900 BC. And New Zealand wasn't touched until 1200. And again, we only know a fraction of what happened because we murdered these people. Because the British, the Portuguese, the Spanish, they loved to murder. Hell, the Spanish and the Portuguese had divided the New World between them. So anything between that section and that section was the Portuguese, and that section and that section was the Spanish. And what did they do? They murdered. The amount of cultures that we don't know about, the amount of events we don't know about, and this is coming from an American. What about the Native American history that we don't know about? And I know I'm ranting now, but it's just so fascinating about Polynesia specifically, because their culture was spread out between hundreds of islands, hundreds of miles from each other. What made them go from Samoa to Cook Island after they hadn't done anything for 1,500 years? Why, for some reason, they're like, all right, we're going to settle Cook Island, 700 AD. What made them 1,500 years later? How many generations? What made them decide, all right, let's go east? Or about New Zealand? Fiji is dead north of New Zealand, yet it took them over 2,000 years to settle it. In my opinion, one of the most fascinating things is the immigration patterns of the Polynesian people. They came from Taiwan, and over the course of thousands of years, if we look at 2,500 to now it's 2,000, that's 4,500 years. If you look at that, how much they've changed. Now the native people of Hawaii, of New Zealand, the Aborigines of Australia, and nobody treats them well, and nobody recognizes them as the original people, especially Hawaii, which is really sad about, especially what America did, and everything we did with pretty much killing off the queen, getting her to dispose the queen so we could take the Hawaiian land because it was fruitful I want to say banana, some fruit that we wanted from Hawaii. It's all profit at the end of the day. It's just sad. I know that's a complete rant, but that's history, and I love it. And the immigration patterns of Polynesia is just so fascinating. Like why they went east, why the people of Taiwan were like, all right, let's get on our dinky boats. Because let's be real, 3000 BC, that's a rowboat, if even. These people, they were brave and they immigrated. And my next video will be about the people who settled in South America and North America through the land bridge through Russia. Because there used to be a land bridge with now modern day Siberia, modern day Alaska. There was a land bridge before the continent shifted. I just think it's so fascinating with the people of South America, North America, Canada, and the Polynesian people, because they were separated from other cultures. They were not connected to mainland Eurasia. The people of Samoa and Hawaii and New Zealand and Cook Island and South America and Brazil, Brazil isn't South America, North America, all of Canada, Mexico, Cuba, all of these islands, they weren't connected to what was mainland history. Everyone loves to study the history of Europe and Asia, Attila the Hun, the Golden Horde, all this fun stuff that is really interesting. But in my opinion, the history that's extremely interesting is the history that was not tied to their Eurasian history. Because through the Silk Road, they were always connected, whether people want to deny it or not. People knew about the whole modern world for a long time through the Silk Road. They knew out east, and the people out east knew out west that there was people there. But these people in Polynesia and South America, North America, their cultures are so interesting because they were separated from modern humanity in that time. Eurasia, Europe and Asia were trading with each other for hundreds and hundreds of years through the Silk Road. But these people in Hawaii, in New Zealand, South America, North America, the Caribbean, they were just, in their own vibe. They had their own cultures, and human civilization was able to birth all these different rituals and religions, and we don't know anything. We know a fraction because we murdered, which is just a shame. But hopefully we learn our lesson and we're better in the future. But alas, look at modern history, and we are not. So that's the first episode of That Weird History podcast. I know it's more like a rant, but I just really like talking about the immigration pattern. I like talking about fun history. This is fun history. This is history that makes you think. Ignoring, Battle of Verdun, or the 100 Years' War, or the anything. Like, literally, Korea's history, it's all fascinating and all, but in my opinion, though, the cultures that were separated from mainland Eurasia, in my opinion, are just so fascinating. And I also love ancient, I love all history. And I don't know if this podcast will be successful. Probably not, because I'm more of like a ranter. I don't really present straight format. I have highs and lows. I'm very energetic because I love history. I would love to teach it one day. But I'm ironically an engineer. But I'll end this video because I'm trying to make these videos short, just fun. People listen to them on like a walk. And they just get a little interesting piece of history. So if I'm going to leave you with anything, please read James Book's autobiography. Or biography, not autobiography. I would recommend reading his biography about his 3 voyages. It will give you a really interesting perspective on history, especially the Polynesian region. That's why I'm fascinated with it. And I hope you all have an amazing day, and goodbye.